Greetings, comrades. Hope this finds you well. Quick shout out to INN, the Indian News Network, which I'm stoked to be a member of. So, it's a pretty interesting article here at Mint Press News by Alan McLeod. Highly rate Alan McLeod's work there and Mint Press News in general. They put out excellent analysis and content from an anti-imperialist kind of leftist perspective, right? And this one is about how the U.S. is preparing a Libya-style intervention in Ethiopia. And again, the whole reason, or a big reason, I should say, that the United States is, going this route toward Ethiopia is because Ethiopia and China have a pretty strong relationship at this point. And I just did a quick, Google search, and I'll show that real quick just to see, kind of what's been going on between Ethiopia and China. Look at that. Chinese foreign minister visits, shows Beijing support for Abiy, the leader of Ethiopia. China poses U.S. threat to impose sanctions on Ethiopia. Designed in Ethiopia, made in China, widening partnership. Why Ethiopia's fate matters to China. Ethiopia-China relations. So again, you could see there, China is trying to, pose the potential for U.S. putting sanctions on them. Chinese foreign minister just visited Ethiopia to give support for the president of Ethiopia, and they have, pretty strong diplomatic and economic ties at this point. And the U.S. does not want that. So that's one of the reasons that, they're going so hard against Ethiopia at this point, right? And again, it has nothing whatsoever to do with promoting human rights or democracy or any of that stuff, right? It never does. Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Amid a bloody civil conflict, increasingly great power competition between the U.S. and China, there are a number of alarming signs that Ethiopia will become the next Libya, African nation when the U.S. intervenes militarily under the pretext of stopping an impending genocide. Considerable military buildup is now underway. Last week, the U.S. military announced it was sending over 1,000 National Guard troops to nearby Djibouti. This is on top of the Special Operations Forces already sent in November. Perhaps most notably, a government official told CNN that the aircraft carrier USS Essex, along with two other large amphibious vehicles, was steaming towards the Horn of Africa and standing by for future orders. For weeks, the drums of war have been growing under the nation's media. Ethiopia's civil war is a problem U.S. troops can help solve. No. Stay the fuck out of Africa, U.S. troops. It includes you, fucking Tulsi Gabbard. Admiral James Stavridis, former Supreme Allied Commander NATO, wrote in Bloomberg and the WAPO. Yeah, sending U.S. troops, that's sending fucking give me a fucking break. You want to send peacemakers, invest money, send humanitarian aid to improve the material conditions that people face there. That would be sending fucking peacemakers, you absolute fucking warhawk. Pivotal nation in East Africa wouldn't be popular domestically, but maybe the only way to stop the conflict, he added. Meanwhile, former Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs, Jendaya Frazier, argued that the West should establish a no-fly zone across yeah, exactly. That's the same thing they did over Libya, right? Country of 150 million people and twice the size of France. When it comes to Ethiopia, said head of fucking Samantha Power, the queen of humanitarian intervention. Yeah, every single option is on the table, using a phrase that has long been understood to be a threat of war. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken also refused to rule out sending troops in Ethiopia when directly asked. Given it's a bloody record, the talk of humanitarian invasion has many Ethiopians worried, as they rightly so, with the actions and fucking rhetoric of these U.S. fucking warhawks, right? This is looking for a pretext for military intervention in Ethiopia. The playbook of interventions in Iraq, Syria, Yugoslavia, and Libya are being referred to. Dr. Berhanu Taye, an Ethiopian physician and member of the Global Ethiopian Advocacy Nexus, told Mint Press. Military buildup on the back of economic actions already taken. In September, President Biden labeled Ethiopian national security threat as he imposed sanctions upon government officials. Last month, U.S. also placed sanctions on Eritrea, whose troops are also heavily involved in the fight against the Tigray People's Liberation Front, TPLF. The White House is currently withholding over $250 million of aid. So again, it has absolutely nothing to do with the well-being of the people in Ethiopia. Otherwise, they wouldn't be withholding over $250 million of aid from the fucking country there, right? Jesus Christ. Critics say that it could have effects crashing the already shaken economy, threatening over 1 million jobs. So, thankfully, like, China is there to help somewhat. I mean, this is just disgusting. Earlier this week, a number of Western governments, including the U.S., signed a statement condemning the Ethiopian government for its human rights violations while fighting the TPLF, which they did not censure. State Department is reportedly considering labeling the actions in Ethiopia genocide, a word that could have considerable implications given NATO's self-declared right to protect doctrine, whereby it claims as the right to intervene anywhere in the world to stop ethnic cleansing. Year of deadly fighting. Bordering Eritrea, Sudan, Tigray, Ethiopia's northernmost region, home to 7 million people. Although ethnic Tigrayans constitute only around 6% of Ethiopia's population, they play an outsized role in public life as the TPLF controlled country between 1991 and 2018, when popular protests forced them out of power. Tigrayans were nearly ubiquitous in the upper ranks of the country's military and intelligence services and were greatly overrepresented in its economic elite. This, for Dr. Tay, amounted to less than a system of apartheid that was ignored by most of the West. Let me guess, because they were beholden to, U.S. imperialism, U.S. empire, I bet, right? Mint Press also contacted a spokesman for the TPLF, but did not receive a response. Since coming in power to 2018, new Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has moved against the TPLF and said changes that supporters see as much needed reforms to reduce corruption and TPLF's grip over public life, but opponents see as overstepping his mandate and as the persecution of ethnic minority. Spark of war came in November 2020 when Ahmad attempted to remove military officers belonging to the TPLF in their command. TPLF fought back, attacking Northern Command headquarters in Mekelle, the capital of the Tigray region. Later that month, TPLF forces also shelled Asmara, the capital of Eritrea. As the TPLF reported, they have drawn close to the capital, Addis Ababa. A number of the country's sports stars, including long-distance running hero Haile Gebrselassie, have volunteered for government military service. Ethiopian woman argues with others over food aid in Tigray. Fighting has continued since then, save for unilateral government ceasefire in the summer in order that the country's harvest would not be ruined. Nevertheless, the humanitarian costs have been extremely grave. More than 9 billion people live in conflict region, estimated 400,000 of suffering under famine-like conditions, and yet the U.S. is withholding $250 million in aid. According to UN, tens of thousands have died in the conflict, which has documented atrocities from all sides. The number of displaced people already high has now grown to an estimated 4 million. TPLF maintains that the Ethiopian government is blocking international aid convoys from reaching Tigray and that Prime Minister Abiy must step down. Yet Abiy won a landslide victory earlier this year and was inaugurated in October. While there were clear drawbacks with the process, voting not take place in war-ravaged region like Tigray, for instance. Difficult to interpret as party winning over 90% of the seats contested anything other than national mandate. Media is demonizing chorus. Thus, the conflict is ultimately a struggle between two political forces for the control of Ethiopia's economy. Yet, this is not at all how corporate media has presented the issue, preferring instead to frame it as Ethiopian Eritrean governments exterminating ethnic minorities. CNN, for example, wrote, Eritrean troops just aren't working hand in glove with the Ethiopian government, assisting in campaign against the Tigrayan people. In some pockets, they're fully in control, waging a war terror that bears the hallmark of genocide and has the potential to destabilize the wider Horn of Africa. New York Times followed a similar line in much of its reporting, embedding themselves with the TPLF. They described their companions as a scrappy force of local Tigrayan recruits that had against the odds scored a cascade of battlefield victories against the Ethiopian military, one of Africa's strongest. Many Ethiopians have been critical of the coverage. Dr. Kasun Melesi, an Ethiopian economist from Oregon State University, let alone the framing, the mainstream media got the fundamental fact about the military conflict wrong. The date the military conflict between Ethiopian National Defense Forces and the TPLF began. For instance, in virtually all of its reporting on conflict, New York Times has stated the federal government launched the war on November 4, 2020, because the media got this basic fact wrong. All major theories and framing based on the premise wrong. So again, it started when the TPLF had that bombing campaign, right? Taylor was more blunt. Western mainstream media continues to fabricate lies and disseminate disinformation intended to demonize the Ethiopian government. One example of bias pro-EB Ethiopians have pointed out is the Times' apparent whitewashing and TPLF's alleged use of child soldiers. Possibly referring to this, the Times describes the TPLF consistently largely of highly motivated young, that's a nice way to say child soldiers, highly motivated young recruits. Even more incriminating, the article's co-author shared a series of since deleted images on his Instagram to promote the story, one of which shows not only children, but obviously prepubescent boys carrying rifles, complete with caption seemingly describing them as highly motivated young recruits. TPLF maintains that it does not use child soldiers. At Besten, the New York Times photographer shared this image of the highly motivated young recruits he was talking about. Yes, those are definitely fucking child fucking soldiers carrying goddamn rifles. Jesus Christ. Unfortunately, many individuals challenging the established Western media narrative are now being excised from social media. I saw this, including massive accounts like Horn of Africa Hub, Simon Tesfamarian, and Abdi Rahim Warsame, some of which had millions of followers. Ethiopian journalist Hermela Aragawa claimed that Twitter senior program manager Martha Molde, herself a Tigrayan, appeared to be abusing a position to ban anti-TPLF and pro-Abiy voices and suppress anti-interventionist hashtag no more Libya. Warning from history. Yes, it was the most fucking prosperous country in all of Africa until this U.S.-led, NATO-led intervention that absolutely destroyed the country. They literally have open-air fucking slave markets now. The height of the Arab Spring in 2011, demonstrators against Muammar Gaddafi broke out across Libya. Gaddafi, historically been a thorn in the side of the West, refusing to follow orders, attempting to unite both Arab and African worlds against the established order. Western nations immediately began warning the dictator was on the verge of massacring all those protesting his rule. Immediately, media were filled with lurid and false stories about Gaddafi giving his soldiers Viagra before making them right. Protesters were, accounts were believed, on the edge of genocide. Obama-era officials like Power and Rice were among the loudest voices, demanding a military response, invoking the controversial right to protect doctrine. Yeah, so that sounds like, again, they're using that same type of rhetoric, right? TPLF, U.S. legitimizes TPLF insurgents. The Tigray's People Liberation Front came to power in 1991 after a long bloody conflict against the military government of Mengistu Haile Mariam. Same conflict ultimately led to the independence of Eritrea and Ethiopia. TPLF emerged itself in the state, with Tigrayans continuing to occupy senior positions across the country. Throughout this time, Ethiopia was a loyal ally of the United States. In contrast with the Marxist Leninist Mengistu, this support led the U.S. to turning a blind eye to the many excesses. In 2015, for instance, President Barack Obama endorsed the country's elections where TPLF coalitions won 100% of the seats as legitimate, while the State Department described Ethiopia as a democracy. This was in contrast to Human Rights Watch, which claims one of the most inhospitable places in the world for people speaking out against government policies. LS for any human rights research and advocacy, noting TPLF held thousands of political prisoners in the country's prison system. Melesi said that by refusing to formally take a side against elected government and a group that said declared a terrorist org, the U.S. has effectively legitimized the TPLF struggle. Samantha Power. fucking humanitarian interventionist warmongering piece of shit that she is. In November, TPLF met with 9 opposition political groups in Washington where they signed an agreement to work together to depose Abiy. Again, he won in a fucking landslide and form a rival government of their own as a response to the major crisis facing various nations of the country and to reverse the harmful effects of Bibi Ahmed's autocratic rule to our peoples and beyond. We have recognized the urgent need to collaborate, join our forces toward a safe transition in the country. Jesus Christ. U.S. help unwelcome. The background of this conflict also includes the wider geopolitical struggle between the U.S. and China. As part of its Belt and Road Initiative, long-term plan to develop much of the Afro-Eurasia and bring it economically closer to China, Beijing has been investing massively across Africa, with Ethiopia one of the continent's top recipients of Chinese investment. And again, the U.S. does not like this. This is a huge reason that there's been the demonization of the Ethiopian government and the support for the TPLF. Between 2008 and 2018, Ethiopia borrowed $13.7 billion from China compared to $9.2 billion from the U.S. Most of that money has gone into huge infrastructure projects or to developing Ethiopian manufacturing. China's money has helped build more than 50,000 kilometers of new roads since 2000. It's quite a bit, right? Including an 86 million ring road for Addis Ababa. It's also funded construction of 475 million light rail system to the capital and 750 kilometer Addis Ababa to Djibouti Railroad, which will greatly boost trade and has reduced transport times from 3 days to 10 hours. Chinese-built port of Djibouti is rapidly becoming one of the world's most advanced and busiest trading centers. Walking the streets in Addis Ababa, individuals are is likely to see Chinese brands as American ones. Huawei and Techno far outrank Apple in smartphone sales, with Infinix and Intel poised to overtake the California giant as well. China signed dozens of memorandum of understanding with Ethiopia, helping it to become, by most measures, the country's #1 import and export partner. Currently, there are more than 10,000 Chinese firms doing business in the country. Biggest loser is the U.S. You think there's something to do with the demonization and these talks of, anything's on the table, right? Which was long ago overtaken as Ethiopia's primary economic partner. Americans have warned that this relationship is little more than a debt trap diplomacy and that China is engaging in neocolonialism across Africa, but there's no evidence for that. In recent years, the U.S. has become increasingly alarmed by China's economic rise and has attempted to stymie it. In addition to sanctions on Beijing, has also tried to block the growth of Chinese tech companies like Huawei and TikTok, all while building up its military power in the South Sea. Happening now, Wyatt Reed, he's a good follow as well. At least 500 members of Ethiopian and Eritrean diaspora are outside the State Department demanding the U.S. stop supporting the TPLF terror and stop economic aggression in the region. Joe Biden, hands off Ethiopia, hands off Eritrea. USA, stop supporting TPLF. Unlikely there'll be a decisive military victory one way or the other either time soon. This means that the humanitarian crisis will continue. Tens of thousands of refugees have fled to neighboring states, while continued violence threatens supplies of food and medicine. Well, many clearly need help, for sure, but this ain't the way to do it, right? Judging by the large rallies held across the world, including in Washington, demanding no more U.S. interventions in Ethiopia and Eritrea, seems clear that they are aware that Biden admin's idea of help might not be exactly what they had in mind. Yes, 100%. So pretty interesting article there from Alan McLeod at Mint Press News. I'll link it down below. And again, the U.S. meddling in any country never, ever has anything to do with the well-being of the people there, the well-being of the most vulnerable, marginalized, as we see with them withholding, I think it was $250 million in aid from Ethiopia as this conflict goes on between the Ethiopian government and, the TPLF forces. Has everything to do with promoting the, geopolitical interest of the U.S. empire in the region, particularly given that, China and Ethiopia forged such a strong relationship as of late, right? They don't like that. They don't want a strong China. They don't want China partnering through the Belt and Road initiatives with these various countries. So that has a lot to do with it. And, you know, anytime the United States says they're concerned with democracy or promoting human rights or talks of genocide, you know, your little antennas, your alarm bells should go off, because you know it's some fucking bullshit coming at you, right? Like the video if you like the damn video, subscribe for more content. All proud of the people. Quick shout out to the 2 Uber comrades supporting my channel, my partner, Indie Left News. Peace. Much love.